Hello and welcome to Astrology with Zeke. On this episode of Historical Figures, by recommendation, we are going to be going over the Iron Lady herself, Margaret Thatcher. Um, of course, she's a woman in no need of introduction, but there were a couple of caveats that I want to put out there as I know she's certainly a divisive figure. Is one, so I'm an American, and she was the prime minister. Got most of her term was before I was even alive. So take that into consideration. And number two, I'm going to be calling this as I see it. So if you're a person who does not like her, or if you're a person who really does like her, this may not go your way. I'm just reading her chart as I see it. So take that for what it's worth. All right. Anyways, with that out of the way, um, let's just go ahead and get started on her chart. Okay. First things first about Margaret Thatcher's chart. The first thing that I notice is she's a Scorpio rising, and Saturn, while technically in the 12th house, is like right there on the ascendant. So what this means is she was a incredibly competitive, but at the same time, highly reserved person, especially with Saturn right there. Scorpio risings tend to be fairly serious people and play things close to the chest. But with the Saturn right there, that would be like especially so for her. Certainly not one who's prone to displays of emotion. I could say that. That's clear as day right there. Yeah, I would say that kind of about does it. And I'll just move on to the next big formation that actually does still include her Saturn because there's a nice grand water trine between, the aforementioned Saturn, which trines Uranus in Pisces fourth house, which trines Pluto in Cancer eighth house. So what this means is all three of these elements are kind of working in conjunction, working in harmony with each other. The question is whether or not it's a quote unquote good thing. Technically, trines are a beneficial aspect, but it can also be too much. So, like I said, with that Saturn on the ascendant, that means she's a highly disciplined, very serious, not prone to emotion, which allows the room for the cold, hard logic to come in, which is unusual for a water sign, as water's all about the emotions, but Scorpio's kind of different in that way, in that they're much more intense and dark. And again, Saturn's about restriction, so it allows the restriction of kind of the pettier side of Scorpion, like maybe jealousy and hyper competitiveness, and like tampers that down into something that's more reasonable, and it allows for somewhat more positive aspects of Scorpio to arise. So the hyper focus to detail, the competitive drive to win, but it's not gross, if that makes sense. Just very controlled, very in charge of themselves. Now, this makes a trine to Uranus in Pisces fourth house, which is about your roots, your private life. Pisces is pretty closely related to religion and spirituality. And with Uranus there, Uranus is about extremes, upsets, ingenuity, or something that's avant-garde. And I'm just doing some brief research on her. I know that she had a pretty strict religious upbringing. And while it's harder to find more details about her private life after becoming prime minister and, having a family of her own, I would say that absolutely stuck with her in her private life. Um, she was probably Miss No Fun at home, probably had a very strict religious expectations within the household and probably took no nonsense. I say this would be especially so with that Pluto in Cancer, which to my mind, that's actually very unfortunate. So even though the trine is harmonious, this just allows the energy to flow more easily. Um, and the fact that this is like making a trine to a different planet that's on the ascendant, and given what she did for a living and how she got famous, and this is the House of Sorrows, I would say that she was probably unable um, to be the mother that she wanted to be, because Cancer's the sign of the mother. And hey, wouldn't you know it? She was a mom. She had two kids of her own. And I don't think she had the emotional capacity to be a mother. I think as a mother, she was probably exceptionally cold towards her children. Or, I mean, this definitely likely just being a prime minister did not have the time for her children that, would normally be expected of a mother. Um, in fairness to her, this is probably a regret of hers because you'll also notice that this Pluto is squaring her Sun and her Mercury in Libra in the 11th house. So basically, what she's known for is being the prime minister, the Iron Lady, always in the spotlight. Yet it seems like her family, her personal family, and her responsibilities as a mother are left behind. So it's rather sad aspect, but there you go. I think that's what that Grand Trine is communicating about her. Um, so yeah, let's keep going. So, like I said, she's a Scorpio rising, so that would make her chart ruler Mars. So her Mars is in Libra, 11th house. Um, technically, Mars is in detriment in Libra. It doesn't like being in Libra is the sign of harmony, of fairness, and Mars is all about aggression and assertiveness. It's about me. But in this case, with it being in the 11th house and it's part of a Libra stellium because there's two other planets um, in this sign, they're not conjunct, but they are co-present. I would say this probably made her an excellent negotiator and also made her highly competitive, at least in the arena of politics, right? Which certainly makes sense. I mean, not only did she have, does anyone have to do a whole lot to rise to the top in your country as a politician, but I would say that would be doubly so with her not only as a woman, but a member of the Conservative Party. That makes her highly exceptional, and certainly someone not to be trifled with. So I just find that pretty interesting about her. Um, it is part of a T square, and it's squaring that Pluto in eighth house, Cancer eighth house, and then it also squares Jupiter in the second house in Capricorn. Now, Jupiter also does not like being in Capricorn. It is also in detriment there, as it's ruled by Saturn, but Jupiter's in reception as it's making that nice sextile to Saturn. So really all that means is Jupiter in the second house Capricorn just means highly fiscally conservative. Yeah, and it just expands Capricornian elements about her. So even though, she's this woman who's an excellent diplomat, and pretty competitive in that kind of a arena and like kind of knows how to work the crowd, work the people. She also has a side of her that's just, well, it's Scrooge, right? From Christmas Carol, the cold businessman or businesswoman in this case, which honestly is just correct for who she was, right? You know? Again, squares with Jupiter typically aren't really that bad. So, yep. Anyways, I think that'll about do it for that. That's pretty simple, pretty easy. We'll go ahead and move on to her sun since that's co-present her chart ruler. So her sun is also Libra, 11th house. It's conjunct Mercury, which is about the intellect, how we communicate. So this again just makes her that excellent negotiator, like the queen of negotiators. This is how she is so adept at getting her ways. She just knows how to schmooze people, you know? Because that's the thing is like even with her being a very polarizing person, um, when you look at how historians compare basically all the prime ministers of the UK, she's amongst the top. And this is why. This is why. It's like even if you don't like her, you have to like give her some begrudging respect for her ability to get stuff done, you know. Um, and moving on, we'll move on to the next formation that really drives this one home. So that Sun Mercury conjunction is making a really nice sextile to her Moon and Neptune, which are conjunct in Leo ninth house, which in the ninth house is all about spirituality, philosophy, higher learning, foreign things, and someone with Moon and Leo, where now, unlike the Sun, Leo Sun, this is more private because it's the Moon and it's about our private lives. You also get a lot of security out of wherever it is. This is. So this just means she was born for leadership. And she really got a lot out of being a leader, but she also has this presence that commands respect. She walks into a room and you know she walked in there. Even if I don't know how large she was, but I can't imagine she was that big of a person. Even if you're not necessarily a big person, you just have that big presence. And this is magnified right here, especially with it being conjunct Neptune, which is all about like illusions and dissolving boundaries. And since her Neptune is, making harmonious um, aspects, I would say this really has a lot to do with her ability to tell a story, her ability to work her way through negotiations, probably to the point that she'd get other people to believe it was their idea. She's that kind of person. She's that good. It's only in hindsight where you go, wait a minute, and then you realize you've been had. In another life, perhaps she could have been an excellent car salesman. Am I right? Anyways, so that just really makes her excellent at what she did. I mean, she's the kind of person who gets her way, and she gets her way every time. You know, I mean, that's just par for the course, right? Um, Anyways, what I will say is there is one last aspect that I can point to, and it has to do with the Moon, Neptune, and Sun, Mercury sextile. It is making what's called a yod or a finger of God, which is pointing to that Uranus in Pisces fourth house. So this is like a stressful aspect, and it's something that's like unavoidable. And what this is basically referring to is just the fact that she was prime minister, which I believe she was prime minister for what, 15 years? So a pretty good chunk of her life. Um, and since it's pointing at the fourth house to Uranus, which is about extremes and upsets, I would just say that, yeah, her job demanded much of her family, you know, and just kind of goes back to what I said at the start with that grand water trine, where, she wasn't able to be present for her husband in ways that perhaps you would expect a wife to be present. She wasn't able to be present for her children in the way you would expect a mother to be present for their children because her work demanded so much of her. Her public persona demanded so much of her. So even though she was really, really good at that, it um, led to a highly unusual private life and probably one that was very hard on her family, you know, which I think is pretty typical for any public figure. But all of this right here just tells me she was destined to be prime minister, to rule, to be a leader, you know. So yeah, I think that'll about do it for Margaret Thatcher. I don't think there's really anything else I can say about her that we haven't already kind of touched on. you know, that would at least be more insightful to who she was as a person. But yeah, that was pretty fun for me. She's a fascinating lady, regardless of whether or not you like her or not. Like I said, I'm an American. I didn't live when she was ruling, but just as an outside observer, I find her highly impressive. It's hard for me to be like, oh wow, she sucks. No. So, um, yeah, so I think that'll about do it for today. Also, I do readings professionally, and I don't do just like a normal birth chart like here. I can also give career advice, things of that nature. If you have more deep personal questions about yourself or perhaps about relationships, if a certain person you're considering, if you're compatible with them or not, I can help you out with that as well. So yeah, you can go ahead and email me at astrologywithzeke@gmail.com. If you're interested in booking my services, I also have a website, astrologywithzeke.com, that you can check that out as well. I'll go ahead and link that in the description as well. Anyways, I think that'll about do it for today, and we'll see you all next time.